This podcast is sponsored by The Sacred Crane, a private not-for-profit organization established to support independent practitioners of the Taoist arts through the funding of hermitage, travel, and educational opportunities. Visit thesacredcrane.org. This is Working with Your Dreams. I'm Kai. The first time I began to think of dreams as a source of information was after a dream I had 2 months before my father died, which was essentially a premonition. I didn't receive it as a message I would use to warn someone. It was more like the dream seemed to simply say, this is going to happen, and there was nothing to be done about it. That dream definitely piqued my curiosity about the power of the unconscious. But it wouldn't be for another 5 years before I would begin keeping a dream journal. In 2005, I had been working with Robert Johnson's book, Owning Your Own Shadow, and also working with Dr. Estes' book, Women Who Run with the Wolves, and other archetypal psychologist writings. But I hadn't actually worked specifically with dreams, although I noted them on occasion. To me, before 2008, dreams were just movies that played in my head when I fell asleep. They were entertaining or they were scary, but beyond that, I really didn't think about them much. It wasn't until early midlife that I began to explore my dreams. My orientation toward dreams shifted from seeing dreams as psychological phenomena or unconscious processes expressed in dreams that I might happen to remember, to more of a spiritual perspective, that perhaps in dreams we connect to something larger. And that's when I found archetypal psychologists' work to be helpful for exploring that kind of relationship with dreams. How you perceive dreams and their potential usefulness determines how you interpret them, and the tools that you will feel comfortable using when working with them, and also how honest you are with yourself when using those tools. In my case, my relationship began as a non-personal relationship when I was younger with dreams, and then it progressed into something more meaningful as I got older. So understanding it through the life stage and the times when we see it as something we need, as contrasted with times when our dreams take a very background place in our lives because we're busy with other things. As a podcast creator, I am making assumptions about what dreams are and how they can be interpreted. This doesn't have to conflict or be either or with other perceptions. But when you listen to my episodes, I want you to be able to clearly recognize the foundations of belief, my worldviews that underpin my recordings. And hopefully you'll start to have a better sense of where you stand and what you believe. I'm Kai Dailey, and you're listening to the podcast learning series, Working with Your Dreams. In this series, we'll talk about how to develop your own approach to dream interpretation, how dream work fosters personal and spiritual growth. We'll also talk about the philosophy and science of dreams, and discuss the latest research and scholarship on the dream experience. Exploring dreams can be a fascinating and life-affirming journey. In each episode, I'll share practical tools and methods you can use right away. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about when to take a dream seriously, right now on episode 1 of Working with Your Dreams. Think about the last dream you remember. Did you wake feeling as if you had just lived an action-adventure movie, or from a nightmare, or from a dream that seemed like utter nonsense? Or maybe you only remember a single image, word, or feeling. Whether mundane or mysterious, dreams are a source of meaningful communication with our inner self. Because dreams can take many forms, it can be difficult to know which ones to pay attention to. But once you know what to look for, you can begin to recognize important messages that would otherwise be drowned out by the chaotic and random nature of dream life. You are important and so are your dreams. Taking the time to learn what they have to say will lead to greater self-understanding and self-acceptance. And a greater degree of those leads to well-being, which can provide you with a sustained sense of peace and contentment. So, let's start at the beginning with some basic criteria for determining dreams of personal importance. And you probably don't need somebody to tell you when you've had a dream that's significant to you, because it's a gut feeling. But it can't hurt to have some criteria that you can initially use to validate your own experience. And once you get to that point where you know what you know, then you can move on to other aspects of dream work. So let's just go over 3 main indicators of significance. First, pay attention to a dream that sticks with you. If you're thinking about a dream hours after you wake, or even days or weeks, that's an indication that you need to take that dream seriously. Pay attention to recurring dreams. When you have a dream or dream imagery that repeats at frequent intervals, definitely take the time to consider it more deeply. Pay attention to strong emotional reactions, good or bad. The emotional import of a dream upon waking can offer reliable clues about its significance to you. I use the word import here to convey a sense of heaviness or gravity. A dream of heavy emotional impact can be an indication that the dream has content that's meaningful to you. But why communicate with yourself in a dream? Well, sometimes it's easier to reflect on difficult issues in our lives through dreams, especially if we have a hard time facing those difficult issues when we're awake. And sometimes we have just as much difficulty embracing the joy in our lives as the sadness. So we may have lots of happy dreams that seem to be incongruent with other aspects of our lives. And our dreams often mirror the stresses we experience in our waking life, especially when we are too busy to notice how stressed out we are. There are philosophers and dream experts that have a range of ideas about how this works, and we'll talk about the perspectives in future episodes. But ultimately, you are the best judge of the meaning of your dream and whether or not you should take it seriously. A dream, after all, is a private conversation between you and your inner world. However, it's not always a clear and simple conversation between yourself and that inner world, because there's biological noise and inner distractions that we have to learn to sift through. And we'll talk about those over the course of this series. But over time, you can work out with your sleeping, dreaming self how best to communicate. Unfortunately, we remember dreams for only a short time upon waking, and we lose most of our dream memories within 15 minutes because the brain functions that process long-term memory are immobilized during sleep. With this in mind, it's an essential tool for determining dream significance is keeping a notepad and pen next to where you sleep, and getting into the habit of writing your dreams down immediately upon waking. You don't have to write down every dream, You can write down just the dreams that stand out to you. So why not just record them into your phone, you may be asking? A paper journal can assist you in remembering not only the details of the dream, but your full experience of it. A published study from last year in the Frontiers of Behavioral Neuroscience reported that writing in a paper notebook prompted greater brain activation during memory retrieval compared to entering information into a mobile device. The researchers also found that handwriting information was more accurate. In fact, research findings published over the last 2 decades demonstrate that the irregular strokes and shapes of handwriting activate centers in the brain related to language and visualization, 2 primary ways our brains process information and memory. Writing by hand also activates imagination, a facility that stirs our emotions. Emotions are a key to not only memory encoding, but also to understanding the significance of our dreams. Basically, handwriting promotes emotional engagement, and emotional and sensory information connects us directly to what we think, feel, hear, touch, and see. According to writing instructor Natalie Goldberg, writing is 90% listening, and listening is an act of receptivity. It's also an act of self-validation, of hearing yourself and acknowledging what you see, what you feel, what you're thinking. So when we write down a dream, we are giving ourselves permission to listen to ourselves. Recording your dreams into your journal without judgment and adding as much sensory or emotional detail as possible will give you the raw material you'll need to begin to understand your dreams and to improve your ability to determine when to take a dream seriously or not, which is, of course, a highly personal perspective. I'm of the mind that a therapist or a friend or a family member, they may give you hints, but they really aren't the authority on your dreams. Books about dream interpretation that have a lot of descriptions of imagery and symbols and what they mean is probably not going to give you that deeper understanding of what you're experiencing in your dreams. We're all influenced by the times that we live, the history that we've inherited, our culture, our family. It's not unusual for people in a culture to dream the same types of images. It's not unusual for people to dream similar images across cultures. But what's interesting about when you ask people what those images mean, even if they're shared images, people interpret them in dramatically different ways. And so you want to prioritize your personal experience of your dreams, the images, your sensory information you remember when you wake, your emotional response, over the interpretations of others or generic interpretations. So to recap the 4 advantages of keeping a handwritten dream journal. First, handwritten notes are more accurate and personal. We record information in greater detail and with our personal handwriting style. Handwriting activates visual, language, and imagination centers in the brain that allow us to emotionally engage with our dream content. Writing by hand efficiently encodes information into long-term memory. And finally, pen and paper is faster when you need to capture a dream quickly. But if all you have is a phone, at that moment that you wake up, use it rather than trying to remember a dream without recording it in some way. And don't take my word for it, experiment with both to see if you notice a difference in the quality of the information you capture and your engagement with it. Important dreams might at first seem mystical or hard to figure out, but when you take the time to write down a dream and give it your attention, your inner world notices, and it will be encouraged to continue to attempt to communicate. Over time, the communication will become more direct and clear, especially when there's something urgent that your inner self needs to bring to your waking attention. With consistent effort, the relationship between your unconscious and waking self will evolve, and a shared symbolic language will develop. Maintaining a dream journal is key to cultivating a mutual understanding with your inner self. This becomes a little superpower that you can draw on in difficult times. Keeping that inner line of communication open can assist you with making difficult decisions and evaluating your path and progress in life. So before we close out this episode, let's review the 3 primary indicators of significance. First, a dream that sticks with you. Second, recurring dreams. And third, dreams from which you wake with strong emotional reaction, either good or bad. So that's it for this episode. And in the next episode, we'll talk about a method you can use to map your dreams to the events in your waking life. In the meantime, I'd be excited to hear that you've kept a dream journal. Until next time, I wish you meaningful dreaming. Visit allaboutdreams.org to download the free guide, How to Keep a Dream Journal. You can watch the companion videos for each episode and access show notes. If there are things you'd like to hear about or have questions, send an email to inquiries@allaboutdreams.org. If you found this podcast helpful, please like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Working with Your Dreams is a production of the All About Dreams Network and Trib Art Studios in Spokane, Washington.